Hey guys, Frightener22 here, welcoming you back to day 4 of my 31 Frightening Days of Halloween Marathon. Luckily for us, it's a full moon tonight, so we're going to be taking a look at one of my favorite werewolf films of all time, 1981's The Howling. Now, before I get into the plot and how I truly feel about this film, it has to be noted right from the get-go that this film was directed by one of my favorite directors of all time, and a bold statement indeed, but in my personal opinion, most likely the most underrated director in Hollywood. The classic and wonderful Joe Dante, who brought us such classics such as Piranha, The Howling, of course, Gremlins, Matinee, Explorers, and Looney Tunes Back in Action. This guy is just so underrated, and he has just made so many classic and cherished films that it's just really a shame when, you see, how many great films he's done, and then you just kind of see that he hasn't, risen to the level of, somebody like Spielberg, who people, not even the most, knowledgeable of film buffs, or even the most casual of movie watchers know Spielberg's name, but nobody really seems to know Dante's name unless you're really, really deep into genre films like I am. So I just need to let that, clear the wind right out the gate that this is directed by the most underrated director in the Hollywood system. Now, that said, like I said, this is one of my favorite werewolf films of all time, and it's really, really easy to see why. First and foremost, actually, like I said, this movie was released back in 1981, and if you refer back to last year's 31 Frightening Days of Halloween Marathon, I reviewed another really big monumental werewolf film from that same year, John Landis's classic An American Werewolf in London. And in that review, I brought up The Howling briefly and how these two, classic werewolf films that people, just truly deem are two of the best werewolf films ever put to screen were both released in the same year. I mean, what are the chances of that really happening, that two really, really impactful werewolf films would be released within the same year? It's actually, really bizarre and crazy coincidental that actually occurred. But, all that said, let's go ahead and get into this film. This film stars the likes of Dee Wallace, Belinda Belasky, Dennis Dugan, Robert Picardo, Dick Miller, and just a whole slew of other great cast members. The plot of this film deals with Dee Wallace, who plays a TV news anchorwoman, and she does some investigative reporting in the opening scenes of this film, where she goes to try and meet a serial killer that's been on the loose, and after a near-fatal encounter with said serial killer and the traumatic experiences that bestow upon her, a local psychiatrist refers her to spend, some time at a countryside rehabilitation center that he runs way deep into the country, but it isn't until she gets there with her husband that the people there, including the doctor that runs it, aren't exactly what they seem, if you catch my drift. Now, this film is awesome. I really, really like the opening of this film, especially because, like I said, this is, after all, a werewolf film, but it kind of starts off in, this seedy, underground, porn shop realmed, area of downtown LA, and it's just really cool. It really, harks back to that film with George C. Scott in it, Hardcore, which is a really, really great film, but it just captures this, really disgusting, grungy, porn shop vibe that, you don't really see too much anymore. I mean, Times Square in New York City was like that in, the 70s and 80s, but they really cleaned that up, but, that's just really like a time capsule in this film, is just getting that opening shot, and that's actually where Dee Wallace's character, meets the would-be serial killer for, a one-on-one interview. And it's interesting to note that when Dee Wallace actually walks into the porn stop, during the making of this film, Dee Wallace was actually so uncomfortable and disturbed by walking into that porn shop that the expression is really sincere on her face, that she's just really grossed out and really sickened by the images that she's looking at. And even before she walks in to that porn shop, you actually catch her making a phone call to her television station, keeping in contact with her, and there's a man outside waiting to use the phone after her, and the man is none other than Roger Corman, the famed producer behind so many cult classics like Rock and Roll High School, Galaxy of Terror, and Death Race 2000. Now, the connection between that is, of course, Joe Dante got his career started off working for Roger Corman, mainly splicing together and editing trailers for his company, and it wasn't before long that he caught his big break directing the 1978 film Piranha. So that's a really cool little cameo in that film. But once this film takes off, it really, really just, keeps you going the whole time through it. After, the fatal, near-fatal encounter that Dee Wallace goes through, she, of course, is sent to this countryside rehabilitation center where they're literally in the middle of nowhere with nothing but woods. Just really sets the tone of that. And that's another thing that I really, really do admire and like this film a lot for, is that although this was filmed in the early 80s, Dante, who has an unforgiving, love for monster movies, science fiction, and cartoons, really captures and embodies the spirit of those old Universal and Hammer horror werewolf films. I mean, you really get the vibe of the setting, just deep, secluded wilderness, great fog, and of course, the classic image of that full moon out there. So I think that is really, really, really cool. That he brought this this age-old idea of like a werewolf film and brought it into the early 80s, but still, tipping his hat off to, the things that really made the atmosphere and the vibe work in those, really early classic werewolf films. So once Dee Wallace actually gets to the rehabilitation center, I did mention that, the residents there, including the doctor, aren't exactly what they seem. Of course, it's a huge conspiracy, and they're all fucking werewolves. So the cool thing about that is that her two friends, who are played by Belinda Balaski and Dennis Dugan, who actually, Dennis Dugan would go on to a directing career of his own, directing such Adam Sandler films as Big Daddy, I Now Pronounce You Chuck and Larry, and most recently, Grown Ups. He also directed one of my favorite childhood films, Problem Child. But Dee Wallace tells her two co-workers about the everything that's going on there, and they quickly run up there to join her and see what's going on. But it isn't before long that Belinda Balaski gets fucked up beyond repair by the werewolves in this film. And the werewolves, attention to every special effects makeup person that's working in the industry now and embarks on making a werewolf movie. The Howling and American Werewolf in London. That is all you need. Let that be your fucking Bible when you want to make a werewolf design. The werewolf designs, as seen on my shirt and the cover of this DVD, the werewolf designs are unreal. Practical effects and really, really fucking talented makeup effects workers just really, really made this happen. Interesting to note is that Rick Baker, special effects master, was actually doing the special effects and the makeup on this project, but he actually left to go work on American Werewolf in London and left the duties on this film to his assistant, Rob Bottin. And it's really interesting to know because both those films in that same year, and of course still to this day, are incredibly praised for their massive achievements in the werewolf designs. I mean, these werewolf designs are unfucking real. They're beautiful. Just, bloody, gory, and, fanged out. They're just incredible. They're just works of horror art. They're just absolutely incredible. You need to see the film to really believe, the transformation scenes and everything that goes into it. But like I was saying before, the werewolf, the kill that Belinda Balaski goes through is worth the entire movie. She gets fucked up beyond repair. Her throat is slit and bloodshot eyes. Dee Wallace Stone finds her, and it's just a really fucking gnarly sight. So by the end of the film, it's really just down to Dennis Dugan and Dee Wallace as they're trying to make their escape. And of course, on the way out, Dee Wallace gets scraped by the fucking werewolf, and her and Dennis Dugan feel like it's really, really important to tell everybody about, what's going on with werewolves. So they have a news report that night, and Dee Wallace transforms into a werewolf on live TV, and Dugan just fucking unloads on her with silver bullets. Great ending to one of the best werewolf films, in history. So if you guys if you guys haven't seen this film, get your asses out there this Halloween season and see it. You owe it to yourself. It is hands down one of the best werewolf films of all time, courtesy of one of the most underrated directors in Hollywood, Joe Dante. As always, guys, thanks again for tuning in to my 31 Frightening Days of Halloween Marathon, and I'll catch you tomorrow with yet another review. This is Frightener22.